Welcome back to Town Manager's Corner. I appreciate everyone being here. As folks know, we have town meeting coming up. Very exciting. Mark it on your calendar, May 4th, 7 o'clock, Abington High School. And since I'm giving dates, I might as well remind folks that the annual town election is April 25th. And polls will be open from 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. And the special election, where the override question will be on the ballot, that is May 16th, and the polls will be open 8 to 6 on that. And for those folks that are not going to be around in those days, Leanne and Barbara in the town clerk's office, they're available to have people come there right now, not right this very second, depending on when you're tuning into this video, but during normal town hall hours, folks can go there and vote over the counter. So it's important that people get out and vote. Today I'm being joined by, I'm very excited, I'm being Shawn Reilly, the town moderator, who has been great to work for. I've only been here a short time, and he's provided a lot of assistance to me and some guidance, and especially getting the warrant. And this is normally his meeting that he hosts, but he was kind enough to come on Town Manager's Corner, and we're going to talk about town meeting, we're going to talk about the budget, and we're going to talk about the warrant. All important things for our residents to know. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you here, and we're happy to have you here.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And I want to welcome you to the town of Abington. I know you were appointed as our interim in December, and then you were formally awarded the position in January of just this year. So, what, 4 months ago?
Yes.
And so you've had very little time to get ready for our May 4th town meeting, but I've seen your work and how much you're putting into it, and we appreciate it. And I think we're doing a good job working hand in hand along with the Finance Committee and all the other town officials to try to get ready for May 4th, which is the annual town meeting at the Abington High School auditorium, as Michael said, 7 o'clock. Now, you have to be a registered voter to attend and take part. So if you're not sure, or if you need to register, you should talk to the town clerk's office as soon as possible. You can't do it the day before. And their number is 982-2112. And you can either check your voting status, like I said, or you can go and register. Attending town meeting is very important, and we really hope that this show is going to give you a little more information to prepare you for town meeting. It's our legislative body in the town of Abington. It is the community, the voters that come, and they are the ones that will vote yes or no on some of the issues that are outlined in the warrant. And the warrant is basically the agenda for the meeting, and it tells you and notifies you of the subject matters that will be discussed and will be voted on at town meeting. It helps us set policies, it helps us fund projects, makes decisions for the short term and the long term, and we can't do anything without the voters' input, the voters' vote. And we usually have very good discussions, very good debates. You listen to different points of view, and then we'll take a vote after each of the 21 articles. The Finance Committee, which is a group of volunteers, reviews every single article. They will be up on stage with myself and the town clerk, Leanne Adams. Finance Committee will be making recommendations for each article after reviewing every part of the budget and all of the workings of the town government and all the town departments. They will recommend that the town should approve this article or not approve the article, which we call passing over. That information is still being finalized, and when it is, the final warrant with the Finance Committee recommendations will be published. It will be available on the town website, or if you'd like to have a hard copy mailed to you, you can call the town clerk, they'll mail it to you. And there'll also be copies available at Town Hall and at the public library. And we usually drop off a few copies at the local post office if you'd like to pick up the warrants there. So we urge you to not only read over the warrant to get familiar, but to also attend town meeting on Monday, May 4th, because the more people that are there, the better quality of the vote. It's a very informative discussion, and we're hoping that this discussion today will help us all prepare for it so that the meeting will move that much more efficiently. So with that, Mike, if you don't mind, let's go right through all these articles. And as the moderator, I try to just run the meeting, try not to get involved in I like this, I don't like this, but I'm going to ask you for your input on either your position as the town manager, or just any general information you can support or provide to the general public. So we'll start right away with Article 1. Now, the beginning of our town meeting warrant has what we call the consent agenda. And that is typically a couple of articles that usually don't have much debate. and they usually rather go very quickly. All those in favor say aye, all those opposed say no, unanimous, we move on. With the consent agenda is intended just to take these 3, 4, 5, 6 articles and just take one vote to approve them all. But when it comes to town meeting, if someone would like to take one of these articles and set it aside outside the consent agenda, they have every right in the world to do that. They can just speak up and ask me to do so. But we'll just go through them individually anyhow, so everyone understands what we're going to be asking you to vote for.
And Shawn, if I could, just before you do that, great explanation on everything, and we want the voters to have as much information as possible. If they go to the town website right now, there is a box to click, and it says town meeting.
Yeah.
We'll have all of the information that they'll need, maps, charts, the warrant, any other documents relevant to town meeting will be in that area. If people wanted other financial information, the town accountant's website has finances
Very
going
detailed.
back over the last 10 years, very detailed.
Super. All right. So Article 1 is the annual funding of student transportation. This is an annual article that comes up that seeks funding to pay for the cost of student transportation for those Abington students attending out-of-district vocational schools, such as some of the VOTEC schools that are obviously outside of Abington. There's 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
It's a routine thing. It's not included in the school budget because it's a different school, but each town has to pay for their own students' transportation. So this is in the sum of $19,902.
That is correct. It's just a standard article. It is, as you mentioned, it is outside of the school budget. It's our responsibility to make sure that we get our children there and we pay for the transportation to go to South Shore Regional Tech, and Norfolk Agricultural School, and any other schools that are out there.
And all of these votes are typically majority votes. We'll try to highlight those that are more than majority. Some of them need a 2/3 vote, things like that. Some of the you'll see in the warrant that there are many of the articles have a town manager's comment where he adds a little bit more information or explains the meaning of the article, which is always very helpful. And in some of the articles, you'll see the selectmen's recommendation also. Article 2, Arc of the South Shore funding. This is again an annual article. It's for $2,500 for the Arc of the South Shore. I believe it's the ARC, the Association of Retarded Citizens.
That is correct. That's the name, and they provide a lot of assistance to parents with children that are on the spectrum and a myriad of other services. And they do take care of a lot of Abington children, and so they ask for funding above and beyond their budgetary thing. They do reach out to the communities where they provide services, asking for some monetary help.
And that will, again, just be a majority vote or maybe just voted as part of the consent agenda. It's, again, a recurring article every single year. Usually it's the same dollar amount, $2,500. That moves us to Article 3, which is the health imperative funding. This used to be called DOVE, for those who remember town meeting from years past. But this is to appropriate $5,000 for the health imperative violence prevention and intervention program services provided to survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. Those are all Abington residents who get these services. It's $5,000. Again, we usually it's contained in the warrant each year, and here it is again as Article 3.
And this is very important. It's a very important subject matter. They deal with citizens that have been aggrieved, and it's important that the community give back and do this. I did want to highlight, as folks will look at this and they'll see the selectmen took different votes. On those first 2 articles that we had done, the select board voted favorably on those. On some of the other articles, they didn't vote to support, not because they don't support the great work that are done by these organizations, but we're in a financial crisis right now. We have a $1.6 million deficit, and they didn't think it was their place to be saying that we should be spending money in other places while we're potentially could be cutting employees. So that's why, and I just wanted residents to know why.
And town meeting can vote, yes, we would like to spend the $5,000, or they could say, no, we'd rather keep it in our savings account or whatnot. So the selectmen are, I don't want to call it a symbolic vote, but I think they're trying to send a message that they're trying to be fiscally responsible where they can. But it's, again, it always comes down to town meeting vote. Whether the selectmen want you to vote yes or no, or the finance committee recommends approval or not approval, it comes down to the majority vote of the voters in attendance that night. So again, Monday, May 4th, circle your calendar. That moves us to Article 4, matching grant funding. This is $25,000 that the town would appropriate, and it sets it into account that we can use in order to obtain other larger grants. There are many grants that are available to the town, from the DPW to the planning board to Board of Health, all sorts of departments, that many times they'll say, hey, listen, we'll give you, let's say, $50,000 or $100,000 towards your program, but you need to give us $5,000 to have a little skin in the game. So this $25,000 kind of puts that in play for the town to take advantage of these larger grant funds. Am I
No, that's
saying
you
that right?
did. You did a great job, Shawn, on that. And you're right. You know, I would rely heavily on this because we're asking all of our department heads, and they do a phenomenal job of seeking out grant funds to lower the cost to the town. And especially in tough financial times, we want to make sure that they continue to do that.
Right.
And we need the seed money.
And again, the select board voted unfavorable for the same reasons, but it becomes a vote of town meeting. Finance committee, I believe, is going to recommend approval, but we'll discuss it at town meeting. Article 5, St. Patrick's Day Parade, overtime and details. As we know, we have the annual St. Patrick's Day Parade here in Abington. It's the 40-something year we've been doing it. St. Patrick himself, Jack Bailey, does a lot to get organized. But as the years have gone by, the crowds have grown, and so the need for more police and fire services and details has become much more important and, frankly, more expensive. So they used to collect bottles and cans to help cover the cost, and now the town in the last few years has also appropriated, in this case, $20,000 to help cover those costs for safety services during the town parade, which this year is on April 12th. If you're seeing this, it's just coming up, but usually it's somewhere near St. Patrick's Day. So any comments on that one?
So, in the same thing with the select board, they voted unfavorably on this. It won't affect this year. This would be for next year.
Right.
And they did that also for it's important for residents to know we're going to be cutting jobs. You know, where should we be spending the funds? That's why they did it. I called and explained that to Mr. Bailey, and I had a visit from Mr. Bailey yesterday and his wife, and we chatted about the parade, and he absolutely, his eyes lit up on the parade, and his son this year is actually going to be St. Patrick. So
Right.
They're very excited.
Jack's recovering from some surgery. He'll be back, but for this parade, his son Tim Bailey will be adorned in the robes of St. Patrick.
And in this day and age, I think folks need to know, Shawn, the police have got a great security plan together. I spent time with the chief, and people always say, "Oh my God, why do you have to do that?" Well, you have to, because in this day and age, you don't know what could happen. You have to be prepared for anything, and it's incumbent upon government, particularly the police and other law enforcement agencies, to make sure that folks and families are supposed to be happy, celebratory. We want to make sure that people are going to come there, have a great time, and most importantly, that they're going to be safe.
Yes, and this year, according to the weather forecast, it's going to be sunny and 60, so that's going to be wonderful. Okay, Article 6, authorization to pay late bills. There are 3 bills totaling $464.87 from WB Mason and a company called Local IQ, which is a newspaper company that publishes public notices. Can you explain what these are all about and why we're voting for them?
No, absolutely, Shawn. So these are bills. The reason that they're late is they come in after the close of the fiscal year. Fiscal year closes on June 30th.
Right.
These bills came after. The only way they can be paid is by a vote of town meeting, and it has to be a significant, it's a 9/10 vote to pay those bills. And it come up the other night at FinCom, and people asked, well, do you get late notices? I said, no, we don't get late notices, because all of these vendors that deal with municipalities understand that if their bill's not there, they have to wait to the next town meeting to get paid.
That's right. Legally, you can't pay a bill from last year if it arrives in July.
That's correct.
So we have to go take this vote. It is a 9/10 vote, which I, as moderator, usually ask for a unanimous vote. And if it's not unanimous, we have to stand up and count everybody in the room. So I'm hoping that everyone will comply. It's just a necessity under the way that municipal finances require by statute. Article 7, the payment of accrued time. This is for $27,000 for accrued time for a retiring police officer, basically for unpaid sick leave, I would guess.
That, sick time, vacation
time,
and any time that we owe, we have to address it budgetarily, and this is the vehicle in which we're doing it.
Right, so 27,000 is a majority vote once again. Then we move to Article 8. This is a placeholder right now, funding for a union contract with the Abington Library Staff Association, Local 4928. The amount right now in our draft is blank because we're not sure if Well, you can explain this.
So it's important to point that out to folks because we're going to have the initial meeting. The union has reached out to me as the negotiator. I told them I would be happy to meet. It's kind of premature right now. We're going through a financial crisis. I don't know what funds will be available in FY27, but I certainly want to meet with the unions and explain that to them in person. We have this here in case we came to some type of agreement. It's on the warrant. If by the time we get to town meeting on the 4th, there's nothing, we can, well, make a recommendation that we pass over.
Right. So if there is a contract in place, the Finance Committee will make a motion to approve the article with the stated dollar amount needed. And otherwise, if there is no contract agreed to, the Finance Committee will make a motion to pass over this article, basically take no action. We'll take a vote to pass over, which means we're not approving any contract because there is no contract.
That's correct.
Article 9, close grant deficits. This is for $64,829,000 related to a deficit with ARPA, the American Rescue. Oh boy, I forgot
American Rescue Plan. I forget what the.
I'll have to. Geez, I should know that.
Yeah, we
Go
should.
ahead. The American Rescue Plan Act, I believe
it is
it
the Rescue Plan Act. So this is money that was administered by the county that we got after COVID.
Federal money, right?
That was federal money. Federal money that, and the county did a fantastic job, and they only took like 1% of the administrative costs. So Treasurer O'Brien did a great job, and the commission is on doing this. What happened is the town got a grant for a project, and one of the things you have to be careful of when you get the ARPA money is you have to make sure that you spend every dime of that ARPA fund so they're not wasted. And, you know, it's hard to get the project to where you want it to be. There's always a cost overrun. Something comes up in the project that's not accounted for. So this happened. So, you know, we want to close out that account, and it's in the rears for the $64,829. So it asks town meeting to support this.
And the approval of this is still within your balanced budget process.
That
the
is
money
correct.
is there, it's set aside. But again, to spend anything, you need town meeting to approve it.
Correct.
Okay, Article 10, the opioid settlement housekeeping article, which is to raise and appropriate or transfer $122,823.78, which is regarding some national litigation stemming from the opioid crisis for the purpose of expending the funds consistent with the opioid settlement. A little bit more about that?
Sure. So these are, as folks know, the opiate epidemic is huge in the United States. There was a big lawsuit, CVS, Walgreens, a lot of the big chain pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies were found to be responsible. They agreed to a dollar amount nationally. It was a national suit. Each state is apportioned money, and then each city and town that put a claim in is entitled to funds. Every year we get the money. The $122,823.78 came into us, and this is accepting those funds and then moving them into a revenue stabilization account for opiate settlement. And then the opiate committee gets together. They solicit applications from organizations that provide programs to wean people off of drugs and things like that. They can apply, and then they get the money awarded. Like COPE was one of the, I know I was just coming in December.
Yes, they're very active.
The Martinez Something House in Brockton got money, as well as our own police department for Narcan and stuff like that they need to have.
Great. So this $122,000 is coming from that national litigation to the town of Abington.
That is correct.
Chapter 11, Chapter 90 apportionment. Chapter 90 is the state law that regards basically funds for each city and town's roadway and infrastructure improvement. We use this to pave our roads, repair our sidewalks. Unfortunately, the money doesn't go as far as it used to because of the cost of pavement now, but this is a vote to accept the $583,342.34 coming from the state to the town of Abington. We just have to take a vote to say, yes, we'll take it.
And absolutely, and we should, because if we don't take the money, some other community would. These funds, how they come up with that number, and people ask this question, Shawn, all the time, and that's predicated on how many accepted roadways we have there, because it's by mile.
Right.
And the more, and we have a acceptance policy in our town, And when I was meeting with Director Stone from the DPW, we had talked about we're going to have to start advancing a lot of the newer roads that are in really good condition that don't need to have any repairs at the moment. We should be accepting those and get into a regular process of coming before a town meeting after the key boards vote on it. And then that's how we'll increase Chapter 90 money. And we'll continue because a lot of potholes after this winter, so we're going to be having a lot of work done.
Across the state, unfortunately, and I know John Stone and the DPW do a lot. They have actual list at their department of like the roads in the worst shape, and they try to take the people off the list or roadways off the list whenever possible.
Well, town meeting was in that. We had two big, I'm not exaggerating, about 8-foot drops, two major potholes that opened up.
The town hall, you mean?
In the town hall parking lot and right in front of the library. And I called John, and he had someone down there within the hour.
Yes, they are very responsive. So that Article 11 is just accepting those monies from the state. That could almost be part of the consent agenda, because it's usually who's going to vote no.
I can't imagine you would say no. We're going to give the money to Rockland. No, I don't want to pick on Rockland, but...
Article 12, the South Shore Vocational Technical High School Agreement Amendment. As you may know, South Shore Vocational Technical High School is located in Hanover, and it does a great job, and it has students from, I believe, 10 different cities and towns, really, including Abington. They have a lot of different programs in the South Shore Votech Regional High School that they don't have in Abington High School or Rockland High School or Hanover High School. And this agreement is expanding the regional agreement by adding the town of Pembroke.
That is correct. So right now it's Abington, Cohasset, Hanover, Hanson, Norwell, Rockland, Situate, Whitman, Marshfield joined a couple of years ago, and now Pembroke has joined. And this is great financially because they're in the process, Shawn, as you know, of building a new high school for the South Shore, and each community is going to be a portion, so the more member towns they are, the less that we have to pay out annually on the cost of the new high school.
Right, and the amendment also changes how they calculate each town's share of any capital money, the bond to pay for the school, meaning that it used to be, the original agreement was, at the time they borrowed the money, they would calculate how many students came from each town, so that determined your percentage of the student population, and that was going to be your payment for the entire 30 or 40-year bond. It was fixed. The new agreement has a rolling average, so if every 4 years they average it out to say that Abington has had an increase in population, so they're going to be paying a little bit more next year, maybe a little less next year. So they're always adjusting it consistently so that each town is paying their fair share based on the number of students that are in that regional school. It's a great school. So that also requires a majority vote just to approve that, to allow those terms to be amended and to allow Pembroke to join the system. Article 13, which is the biggest reason why we have a town meeting, it's our operating budget for fiscal year 2027. Fiscal year 2027, cities and towns, they operate on fiscal years, not calendar years. So the fiscal year starts on July 1st of 2026, and it goes through June 30th of 2027. That's fiscal 2027. So Article 13 is the town's review and voting on a budget for every single department in the town of Abington, and for capital plan investments and for community preservation investments, for everything that occurs after July 1st of 2026 and through June 30th of 2027. It's a very detailed budget that the town manager and Andrew Nokon, who is our financial director and town accountant, and the finance committee, who meets regularly with all the departments, they try to go through it. And why don't I toss it to you, and you can kind of give your best description of where we are.
Sure. It is a monumental feat to be able to get all the numbers. We spend time meeting with all the department heads. I wasn't here for that, but Andrew normally would sit down with each of the department heads, talk about what they're going to need, because this year, Shawn, as you know, there were some different challenges with the shortfall in revenue. And I always remind folks that we're in this predicament not because of mismanagement, but it's really a revenue problem. And it's not just affecting Abington, it's affecting about potentially 70 other communities. And I know like Situate is having their meeting this Monday night coming up. But when people look at the budget this year and they look at it online, they'll see a level funded budget and a level service budget. The level funded budget It's just that you're going to get the departments will get the same amount of money that was funded in FY26. Now, it sounds like that's a good thing, level funded, but it's not, because what it doesn't take into consideration is the collective bargaining agreement. So there's a cost each year that goes up, so that we make sure that we're paying our people properly and we maintain the workforce that we have. What it also doesn't take into consideration for is rising costs in healthcare, the pension fund, gas, oil, electric.
Which every family is experiencing.
Which every family's experienced. So the difference between the level funded and the level service budget is about $3.6 million. And when you look at the level service budget, which they'll see that also, that level service, so if town meeting was to vote the level funded budget, that would produce the funding that we had in 26, but there would be those shortfalls for those departments. Then, if they voted the level service budget, that gives an opportunity to close the gap on those. And that's where people have been watching, and if they've been watching the Town Manager's Corner, you'll see that we've had the various department heads to come in and talk about those shortfalls. And there's a number of shortfalls, and you'll see if you go to vote, that's what the override ballot looks like.
We won't have the X through it, but we have to.
We won't have the ideas. But if we look, so the shortfalls which are incorporated, those differences, the town meeting would have to approve that, are in the level service budget. And that is $275,514 for the fire department, the police department, $875,486. For the schools, $1,622,114. For the Department of Public Works, $261,094. For the Council on Aging budget, $6,468. For the Abington Library, $13,964. And for Town Hall, which includes the offices in Town Hall, Town Manager, Town Clerk, Assessors, Building Commissioner, Treasurer, Health, Information Technology, Veterans, and Planning, that is $353,380. And those numbers are incorporated into level service. So irrespective of how the voters vote, they'll be presented the two articles to vote on, and then I'll let you explain how we would vote on that. Then, 2 weeks later, on May 16th, those funding and the ballot I just showed you, the voters will have the opportunity to go to the polls and then vote. It's a menu option on which of those they could vote for, all of them, or they could vote for the ones that they think that they could afford.
So let me ask you a few questions in this, and hopefully to get some more information out there to the general public. You mentioned it's a two-sided problem. There's revenues are down for the town, and expenses are going up.
That is correct.
Which everyone's feeling that, and you go to the gas pump. And just like you feel at the gas pump, so doesn't every time we load up a police cruiser or a fire engine or an ambulance or a DPW truck, the town's paying more for gas. That's just an example. But you mentioned the revenues going down. What are the revenues that you're speaking of that the town is seeing these drops?
So we're seeing, the one revenue that remains strong is the real estate tax. That is the largest portion of the revenue piece.
With every town.
With every town.
Yeah.
And that is, through the assessment, you get the money. The second most important piece is local receipts. And we're seeing some drop off in local receipts. And what people want to know, what are local receipts? Well, excise tax, any of the fees that they pay to the town, building
if you buy a new car
fees.
Or if you own a boat, you're paying excise taxes.
But people, as the economy starts to tighten up, people aren't buying the very expensive, instead of buying, maybe a top of the line Cadillac, maybe they're going to buy a Buick.
Or they keep their older car.
Or they keep their older car.
So the older car might have a $100 excise tax bill, where if they went out and bought a brand new car, it may have been a $700 excise.
That is correct.
So you're seeing that drop.
You are. And then the other thing is, with the state legislature, and I don't want to pick on them because they're dealing with all the cuts of the federal government, which now the state government has to pick up. But then that really penalizes local cities and towns because there's less local aid money coming. And if you look over the last few years, local aid's been relatively stagnant. And that really affects our ability to operate. And what we're seeing is, yes, this year we get like 2.4% in unrestricted government aid, but when you take out the cherry sheet money, the cherry sheet money is fees that we have to pay to the county, fees that we have to pay to the state. It really only nets out to be about 1%. So, the legislature has to do something so that cities and towns are getting more local aid, because we need the real estate tax, we need any interest that we get, we need local receipts, and we need local aid.
So if local aid is only going up 1.1%, compare that to what your expenses are doing. Like, what's your healthcare increase? What are the increases that you're
so healthcare went up like 10%. The pension fund, we're on an accelerated pension program. Right now, Plymouth County is trying to get the pension fully funded by 2032. It was 2030. It went up because some of the smaller towns couldn't afford to make the accelerated pension plan. So we're doing that. We're seeing a big rise, especially in the winter in New England, the electrical use. A lot of our buildings use a tremendous amount of electricity, both for heating and for providing light. And the cost of that's been going up astronomically. And we go out and we get locked in, but even though we're locked into buying purchases, even like the residents are locked in because they have aggregate, because the cost, Shawn, was so high this year, there's language that it exceeds, if it goes up by a certain amount, you have to pay more.
Yeah.
Even though it's a contract, and people get all upset, but the contract language spells it out. So for the long run, you are saving money, but in the short term, during the winter months, you're paying more.
And a lot of our town expenses, again, like every other town, are expenses you simply can't afford. You can't avoid, I should say.
That's correct.
We can't say we're not going to pay the pension contribution this year. We'll double up next year. That's just, you can't do that.
We're not going to pay health care. We can't do any of that.
We're going to shut the lights off.
Right. People can't operate. They can't run the computers. You have to have electricity. And
so those costs are all going up. But state revenue, I mean, the local aid revenue is only going up 1.1%, whereas you said healthcare is going up 10%. And that's just a losing scenario. And you're seeing it if you pay attention to any other cities and towns around us. This is not an Abington only thing. This is, Duxbury had an override. I know, like Hanson. Go down the list. There's just
Situate,
a lot.
Stoneham, Milton. Yeah, there's so many, and they're all having the same problems. And it's really a revenue problem. And Prop 2.5 was put into place that is to give some prediction to the residents so that they know. And the levy can only go up 2.5%. Now, that's a law that went into place in 1982.
The levy meaning basically your tax bills.
The tax bill. Well, not the individual tax bill, but it's the actual total levy. When you look at the levy from year to year, that total number cannot exceed 2.5%. So you have that constraint to deal with when everything else around you is rising, and you have to be competitive in the market today. Your salaries have to be competitive, or you're not going to get the best and the brightest. They're going to go to your neighboring town because, people look at that. They look at their mileage. How far do they have to drive? They look at health care. If you're not offering good health care, people aren't going to come to the town.
Well, it's a good point, because a lot of people, when you're out shopping for a new home, I do a lot of real estate work as a real estate attorney. I talk to a lot of brokers. The first question is, how's the school system? That almost dictates the value of your real estate in a given town. And I think a lot of people are aware that the police department and fire department are at this point really kind of up to where they, I want to say, want to be. Obviously, they'd love to have more officers, but they're in a good position right now, and the school department is solid. But because of these cost increases, even the union contracts, a 1% increase, government is a highly service oriented. And most of the government costs for every city and town is employees. It's the people who clean the streets, who teach your kids, who arrest the bad guys, who come when you call for an ambulance. It's all people that we're paying. And when it goes up 1% or 2% because of a contract, we have to be able to afford to pay that. But when the state's kicking in only 1%, where's it coming from? So now, you mentioned 2.5. That's why the town meeting is so important and the vote on May 16th, because it's up to you now, the residents, to make a decision. Do you want to do level funded, which means we're not going to go for the override, we're going to do level funded, but that results in laying off teachers, police officers, DPW or fire, and harming every department. If that's the way we want to go, it's going to be a decision of town meeting. If you would like to support an override for any one of those 7 departments, we'll call them, all or several or one, you have a right to vote for that. And we'll talk more about this at town meeting, and that would keep them, it's not giving them really extra people, it's keeping them where they are right now.
That's a great point. That's exactly. It keeps them to right where they are right now. And police, I'm out talking to folks, and, people are concerned about the police. For the first time in a long time, Town of Abington, after getting out of civil service, has hired 7 new officers. And if the override didn't go through, that the chief's going to end up losing 6 of the 7 new officers and administrative people. You touch upon another great thing, Shawn, being the lawyer and talking about people moving in with young families, and they look at education. For most people, their house is the single largest asset that they'll ever own.
Yeah.
And as a former assessor, there's a direct correlation between the perceived value of your school and the value of your property. So, it's why it's so important that the schools have funds to make sure that the class size is manageable, that they have teachers to teach STEM, all of those important music program, sports programs. It's
Right.
important that our children be well-rounded.
And that's one of the reasons why you see the school department's request for the override, the 1.6 million, is the largest of them because it has the most employees. And it also services, 2,500, 3,000 children in
Yes.
town, and it has several different buildings that they have to pay the heat bills for, the electric bills. And you mentioned the police, they might lose 6 officers, and the fire department would be substantially cut back where they may not have that second ambulance available, which is a revenue
And
generator.
you don't want to be the second call.
No, you don't. And but again, it's all up to you, because this does cost money. If you vote for the override, it will cost you more money. And I understand it's going to be on the website very soon, the actual amount it will cost for you if you vote for any one of those 7 overrides or all 7 overrides. It comes down to you and your family to make decisions. These are not easy decisions for people, because everyone is really penny pitching right now. But it's also quality of life, because whatever we vote on May 4th, essentially, is what is going to define the services you get for all of next fiscal year. We really can't have a meeting, halfway down the road and say, oh, we're going to, well, theoretically we could say, oh, well, let's do an override in December. But that just, you can't add teachers in the middle of a school year. So it's important. So, hopefully this will give you some more information. You'll take the time to get educated and really convince yourself whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it, and have the right reasons, get the facts. And I know between the town manager's office, town accountants, and the finance committee meetings you can watch on cable TV, there's a lot of information out there, and you can make the decisions. And that's why we really hope you'll come on Monday, May 4th. And then again, you'll vote on Saturday, May 16th, will be the ballot box election. Because in order for an override to pass, there has to be 2 successful votes. One has to be at town meeting, which basically authorizes it in some ways to go to the ballot, and then you have to vote again at the ballot. And everybody, again, all registered voters can vote. So if it passes at town meeting but fails at the ballot, then there is no override, and they go back to level funded services. If it passes both sides, then they would get the extra money, and they would maintain the current level of operation that they have right now. And if I say something wrong, jump in, okay?
No, that's 100% correct. And the piece that people have to understand is, town meeting can change some of the numbers, and even if the numbers are different in the level service budget, what would happen is, we're asking level service is roughly 3.4 million more than the level funded, and that's to keep everyone in place that we have now. But if they change the number, let's say they look at the police and say, well, that would be more manageable, it's at 400 instead of 875. Then you go to town meeting, the ballot has the 875. This is all legal. This is all prescribed in state statute. It's not a law that we make up. So what would happen is if the police budget was voted at the 875
At town meeting.
at the special election. So say they reduced it at town meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, you said
Yep.
875.
So
yeah.
say they reduced it,
Yep.
and then they voted the 875, which is on the ballot at the special on May 16th. Then they would have the opportunity to have another special town meeting to give town meeting the chance. But as you mentioned, the numbers have to match both at town meeting and at the special election.
Right. So it'll be, again, up to you. I think, so how we're going to present the budget as we typically do each year is we go through each page, which is usually a 4 or 5 page handout, and I'll ask if there's any questions on any of the budget items where it goes from, DPW to fire to council on aging to library to everything's listed there. And if there aren't any questions on page 1, we'll go to page 2 and we'll continue on to the end. And there'll be columns on the presentation. It'll be the Finance Committee recommendation, usually for the level funded, and then there'll be another recommendation for the proposed override amounts for those specific 7 departments. It's my thought, we're going to talk more with Town Council, that at some point we need to take a vote to approve a level funded budget. So we establish a budget so we have money to pay for services after July 1st. And then secondarily to that, we'll take a vote on, would you like to move forward with any or all of these proposed override dollar amounts, knowing that nothing is locked in until or unless the May 16th vote is also successful. In the past, town meeting has taken a vote to approve the proposed overrides and then let the ballot box make the decision. Because sometimes more people can go to the ballot box election than might be able to attend town meeting. Town meeting might decide to say, oh no, we're only going to vote for 5 out of the 7 to go forward. It's the democracy. It's what we're going to work for. But we need to establish at least a budget in place, which would be the level funded budget, and then we'd have to have a second vote as to whether you want to at least consider the override amount, and if so, May 16th becomes the critical decision. Sounds confusing, but we'll try to explain it as much as possible at town meeting. But again, I would urge you to go to the town website and click on the town meeting button. You'll get a lot of this data. And you can also, I'm going to do it to you, Mike, you can call Michael Maresco at 982-2100.
That is correct.
And ask any questions you'd like.
Right. And I just wanted to get back, because you raised another great question, was about the calculator. So right now, you can go to the town accountant's website, and there's a calculator. You put in your house value, and then you put in the dollar amount, and it will tell you how that will affect your annual payment, and then you can divide by 4 for your quarterly payments, etc. And you and I had a discussion before we went on air, and I'm going to have him tweak that a little to add in some of the other stuff that you've been hearing from residents.
Great. Yeah, the input from residents is always, because the town manager's office would like to know what is it you're thinking, what information are you looking for, and they'll get it for you. And they try to anticipate as much as possible. If there's something that's missing, just make the phone call or send an email. So let's move on, if you don't mind. I mean,
yes,
that's the most important budget, most important article is that Article 13, but Article 14 is the funding of the annual capital plan. These are items that departments submit requests, and we don't have the money to pay for every request, but so this is the list of those capital items, meaning vehicles or building improvements or purchases of equipment that we do have the funding for if town meeting approves it. And you can see it up on the screen right now. You have 2 from the police department for the taser and the cruiser replacement. The police cruiser replacement is usually on every year because those cruisers run 24 hours a day.
Right. And we've done something very unique is we're on a lease payment.
Yep.
And that helps reduce the cost. So we're in year 2 of a 5-year plan on that. And the same thing with the tasers. We finance the cost of tasers. Tasers, like guns and like ammo, get stale. So after so many years, you have to replace them. So we were able to finance it out to make it more palatable. So this would be the 2nd year of the payment on the tasers.
And you'll notice that the proposal is to pay for the tasers with free cash, and the cruiser replacement with stabilization fund. We'll go through the rest of them, but those 2 terms I think we need to define: free cash and stabilization fund. Let's talk about what is free cash.
So free cash is money that's left over. So at the end of the fiscal year ends on June 30th. Under DOR regulation, you have 2 weeks to close out the various line items. And what they allow you to do is normally you can't transfer money. During the normal fiscal year, if there was a shortage in expense, you can't use personnel money. If there's a shortage in personnel by department, you can't use expense money. That all changes when it's June 30th. You can close out any redlined items. So they allow you to do that. Whatever money's left over after you do all of that, that is free cash. It's money that was appropriated, and for whatever reason, usually you get a better economy of scale. We signed a new agreement on electric, so the electric costs were down based, when you put the budget together. Remember, you're putting the budget together, 14, 15 months before you're actually using the budget.
Right.
Because it takes you a year.
So if you had, for example, if last year town meeting approved a $50 million budget, and then as the year progressed, we ended up only spending $49.5 million. That means there's an extra $500,000 that would be remaining in the town's coffers.
Called free cash.
It's a horrible name, free cash.
It's an oxymoron.
Yes, because
it
it's not
isn't free.
Right.
That's correct.
But free meaning it's available now
Correct.
to spend in the next year.
Yep.
And that's where some of these items are being paid out of free cash. You'll see that kind of repeated throughout the warrant.
And we're not allowed to spend that money until the Department of Revenue reviews all of our financials.
Right.
And then they certify free cash. Once it's certified, then we can allocate it. We have to come to town meeting for the legislative body to sign off on the allocation.
Right. In the town, someone asked me, the town is audited by outside auditors.
That is correct.
Right.
Annually, we have to, by
Every
state law.
year.
By state law, correct.
Right. So someone's looking over the books and checking it. And like you said, we can't spend free cash until the state has reviewed the books and said, we agree with that amount. You're now allowed to spend that or hold on to it, whatever you'd like to do.
And the reason that they do the audit is because not only do they look at the numbers to make sure you're in compliance, DOR looks at the numbers too, but the audit looks into other things that are beyond that. Are we investing the money properly? Should we be using another vehicle? They do a management letter.
Good fiscal management
good
policies.
fiscal management. They get into all that, and that's all important, making sure that we're maintaining strong fiscal restraint when it comes to
spending taxpayers'
saving,
money wisely,
correct.
investing it wisely. And then there's the stabilization fund, which most people refer to it as each town's rainy day fund or their savings account. And it almost says what it is. It's when the town has extra money, extra free cash perhaps, they take a vote to transfer it into the stabilization fund. And that money is set aside for rainy days, but it's also to establish a good bond rating, to say, to show that we do have money in reserves. If things get tight, we can still pay the bill.
That is correct.
Right? And
that's very important, and they look at that. That's how they grade us. Abington is a AA, so not a AA. So they look at that, and a lot of that's based on how we pay our bills, our fiscal structure. Do we have money set aside in the rainy day fund? Do we have money in OPED set aside? There are certain items, there's like 20 or 25 items that they look at, and that's how they reestablish. So when we went out to roll over the ban, so right now we're doing a ban on the DPW and fire project.
Borrowing in advance of, what is a ban?
Borrowing.
It's a short-term note.
It's a short-term note.
Yeah.
Because you can't go to bond until the project's finished.
Right.
So we had to do a ban to roll it over. When they did the ban, the select board just signed off on the new ban, they look at your financial situation, and they upheld a AA bond rating,
Great.
which is good.
So we get better interest rates.
You get better interest rates. Yeah. If you were a B, you pay more.
thus
If you're a C,
save
you
money.
pay more, and then we save money, and that affects the the cost of doing business. There isn't a set amount that's in there, but they want to see that you're maintaining it. Now, the problem is we're no different than any other community. We talked to there's potentially 70 other communities out there looking to do some kind of override. If you don't have the override, then you have to dip into the rainy day fund, but you have to be very careful. We have like 3.2 million, I believe, in our rainy day fund, and we probably ought not take out more than $500,000 a year with the hope that we get money back. Hopefully the economy will turn around. Hopefully we'll see a rise in local receipts. We'll see gas prices go down. We'll see, when we get to 2032, if the pension thing's right, then we'll see a cost savings there also. So it's a balancing act, just like folks do at home with their own checking account.
Right.
And that's what we have to do with the town
It's a good
finances.
example. It's, most people have a checking account and a savings account. You try not to dip in savings unless you have a big expenditure or a shortfall. If you're out of work for a few weeks, whatever, you dip into saving. Stabilization is there for the town also, but to take money out of stabilization for any purpose, it requires a 2/3 vote or greater, and that's why you'll see at the end of this article, Article 14, it requires a 2/3 vote to approve all of the items, because some of them are being paid out of stabilization fund. And I think, Michael, I watched the Finance Committee meeting. I believe you mentioned usually you don't take more than $500,000. You like to minimize it, and I think that's what
Correct.
we're doing this year.
That's what we're doing, because, and all I did is divided what we had there by 6 to make sure, because when you look at why Rainy, it's to get you through those tough times.
Yeah.
And we're anticipating the tough time. If nothing changes in the economy, we need to get to 2032 to get some breathing room on our own.
Okay, so you've mentioned that a couple times, and that's about the pension
Yes.
fund, the fully funded pension that towns are contributing so that Plymouth County will have collected all the money they need to cover pretty much all of the future pension payouts for all of the employees for all the different towns that are in the Plymouth County pension system. Do you know how much are we spending, or how much are we authorized or required to pay each year? Is it a multi-million
No,
dollar?
it's multi-millions. I don't have the exact dollar amount, but
Couple of $1 million every year gets set aside.
yeah, more than that.
And so your point is,
probably 4 or 5 million.
so when we're done in 2032,
A portion of that there would be, maybe a few extra million, maybe a little
Yeah.
more, because the people that are in the system would be fully funded, and then as new employees come on, we would be paying the standard money, and then just for the new people.
gotcha. So
'Cause
it
we'd
would
be
free
caught
up after 2032. We're expecting to have $2, $3, $4 million now available for other things in the budget, or to put into stabilization, or whatever the town meeting decides at that time. It's just getting there. We're
That's
still
correct.
5, 6 years
That's
away
correct.
from that.
We're looking at ways to try to get us there.
Okay, thank you for that. And so that's the purpose of stabilization fund, and that is being used. We're dipping into a little bit to pay for some of these things that the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, all the financial
Right.
officers have deemed that these are the capital plan items we really think we need to purchase now. And there's a lot of things that are not on this list because we just simply,
Can't
you
do
guys
it.
made a decision, not me, of what will have to wait.
We had to prioritize. We have a finite amount of money.
Right.
And where we didn't have actual cash available, we had to use the free cash, and we had to dip into stabilization, because you'll see on the list as we go down school department, the Beaverbrook boiler is gone.
Yeah.
We're lucky this year. It had gone offline. They got it back on. We can't have kids and teachers in buildings without heat.
It's over like 40 years old.
It's over
that boiler.
40 years old,
Yeah.
so we've definitely got our money's worth. So we're going to have to replace that, and it's $275,000. We just didn't have the money. We weren't going to borrow, so that's something that will come out of stabilization.
And you can see the fire panels for the Woodsdale School, Beaverbrook, and Frollo School Administration Building. Safety upgrades, getting those done. Don't really want to push those off
No.
if you haven't. We skipped over the DPW's athletic field paint machine.
Yeah.
The one they have ain't working.
No, and they have to. There are so many sports in this town.
Yeah.
They have to go out, and John and his staff do an incredible. They work with all of the sports people, the coaches, to make sure that the lines, the numbers, that's done constantly,
Yeah.
weekly and daily. So the machine, they're sort of piecing it together to go, but there's no backup, so they need a new machine.
Yeah, it does serve. I used to do it when I was a teenager. I worked for the park department, and you have to play the game. You can't go line a field if it rained the night before, because
Right.
now it's wet. On some of the fields, you had to wait 2 or 3 days, and then sometimes you got to get the field. You got to get it painted before it rains, and so it's.
That must have been a
always-
fun job.
It was. I liked being outside.
Yeah.
Water department. Now, the water department and sewer department items are paid by the water department and the sewer department. These come
By the
not from
ratepayers.
taxes. Exactly. Everyone not only pays real estate taxes, but you also pay your water and sewer bill. And those water bills and those sewer bills is revenue for the water department and for the sewer department, which they hold, and then they pay for improvements to their respective systems and for equipment they need to keep the system going. But they need town meeting to just approve and authorize those expenditures. So you see the water department has a number, 11 different things that they would like to do, and typically this is you see this each year. The water department has a lot of different things to do because it affects the entire town.
Right.
Same thing with the sewer department. They've got 5 things listed there. They need a Ford Explorer because the other one's older. Again, from the sewer department's retained earnings. It's just approval of money that's sitting in their accounts, but informing the voter and asking for your authorization.
Right. This doesn't have a cost attributed to it. It only affects the money. So if you live in town, you get your water, part of the money in your water bill, a portion of it goes into retained earnings. The retained earnings then is money to invest in the infrastructure, water mains, sewer mains, water pipes, sewer pipes,
Right.
Pumps, whatever they need.
And it's in parts of it, especially the water, are older systems that they're trying to upgrade and replace. I know there's certain parts of town that have tough issues with water. This is how they try to get, start taking bites out of those problem areas by approving these different requests. And the last one on the capital plan budget is Strawberry Valley Golf. They're just purchasing a pickup truck that they need for servicing throughout the Strawberry Valley, which is a town-owned golf course. Everyone who goes up there and pays their greens fees, that comes into the Strawberry Valley's retained earnings, and they use that to reinvest in everything they need to spend to keep that. It's a beautiful golf course. They've done a lot of great improvements. They got some new irrigation systems up there. They maintain things very well, and so this is just being spent out of their money that they're already holding on to.
That is correct. And then at the end, people will see, so it's broken down. Free cash contributed $71,250. Stabilization fund, $465,660. Water retained earnings, $1,715,000. Sewer, $371,570. And golf, $90,000, for a total capital plan of $2,713,480.
Wonderful. And again, this is all aligned with the budget in Article 13. We have money that's set aside for the budget. We have money set aside for the capital plan. As long, assuming town meeting all approves these, the money is set there, and they have to identify where the funds are coming from so that the accountant in the state can show that the books are balanced.
That is correct.
So we move on to, and that again, we'll usually have one vote after any questions about the capital plan. And in this year, we'll need a 2/3 vote because we are using stabilization funds to help pay the bills. Article 15, additional funding for the new fire station and DPW project. This is to borrow money. And full disclosure, I am volunteering on the fire station and DPW building committee. In the initial stages of this project, we were digging out in the back right corner where this new salt shed is now. We were aware that there was an older dumping area that the older DPW, we're talking back 50, 67 years ago, had dumped things like pieces of asphalt and old telephone poles. There were things out there we were aware of, so we did test borings throughout the entire site, to 7+ acres, and there was like over 20 or 30 test borings. The town also bought the house that used to be to the right of the police station, and that land went from Central Street all the way back to the cemetery.
Right.
And the backyard was full of tall trees, 40, 50 years old. We did some borings out there. We found some areas where we knew there was issues. We did a couple of borings in the backyard, and it seemed to be clean. We did some borings around the old fuel tank, and that came up to be clean, no evidence of a spill. And then in other areas, we knew, like up front, there was more of a what they call unsuitable soils. You don't want to build a building on squishy soils, so you have to remove those. So we did a lot of borings. And as we dug, the depth of the dumping area was deeper, and come to find out that the town apparently had been dumping on the neighbor's backyard and then buried it all. So we were obligated, once we found it, to clean that out. And gone are the days where you can just scoop up whatever you dig and throw it in the back of a truck and haul it out of town. The regulations now are unbelievably strict. For good reason. It's all environmentally. So anything we find, and I know people talk about contaminated or toxic soil, it's not necessarily that. Most of it was what they call impacted soil, which just simply means that the pile that you dig out of there wasn't just sand, but it had pieces of telephone poles, plastic bags, asphalt pieces from an old road, metal things, whatever, anything that's in there that's not natural, that becomes impacted soil. And now you have to test it for multiple different chemicals. You have to wait usually 3 to 4 weeks for the tests to come back. Then you have to find a disposal site anywhere around New England that will take that level of impacted soil. Some of them are easy. A lot of it went down to a place in Bridgewater or East Bridgewater. Some of the things like the telephone poles had to be shipped to Maine, so we had to put those in a pile and wait for that to all work out. You have to then send your inspection reports to the disposal site. They review it, make sure like, okay, we'll take this. They send it back. Then you schedule the trucking and it goes. So it became very expensive and a delay really to us to haul that off. We had money in the budget. We had expected to have to do this. We had a lot of money in the budget to take this, but the extent of what we dug was far worse than anyone in even any of the professionals. Believe me, we did test borings in that area, and it was worse than anyone thought. And unfortunately, like in most construction budgets, you don't know what's underground until you start digging. And that became an issue for us. And there's a state law that addresses this specifically, that for a municipal property, if you're digging or putting in a building and you find impacted or contaminated soil, the town is allowed to pay for that, to borrow the money to basically reimburse the construction budget and pay for it over 10 years. And that's what this is to authorize, it's not raising our taxes actually, because, and you tell me if I'm wrong, there's a line item in the town budget every year for paying debts and liabilities, for paying the bond amount for, the new school, or for the police station, or for the new fire truck we bought a few years ago, things like that. And this money would be paid out of that line item. It is budgeted in the town budget to reimburse the construction budget. So it is an unexpected issue, but that's why that state statute allows municipalities to do this. This happened when we built the police station also. When we built the police station, we built a new police station, we tore down the old police station. We knew there was an underground tank in the property there, and we did tests, and everything seemed to be fine. When we dug it up, there was a spill, and we had to go back to town meeting and ask for more money to pay for that extra cost. In this case, in the new fire station and the new fuel island, the testing around the old fuel island actually came out clear. And when we did open it up and dig, it was clean. However, the area in the salt shed was more expansive than we thought. So although we won on one side with the fuel island, we lost on the other side. And this is to authorize the town to use the state statute to borrow over time to pay, and it's all within the town budget. Did I summarize that? Okay.
I think you did a great job. I just want to touch upon a couple of points. It was brought up at FinCom the other night. Someone had asked, well, we simply shouldn't pay it. We signed the contract. And what with municipal finance, you sign a contract, there's a amount. So, we have professional people come in, people that are used to dealing with soil composition, things like that. They take a look at the parcel, depending upon the size, the age, the history, etc. They then put together a plan to do the borings. They do the borings to look for the types of soils that you're talking about that you can't build on. And they also look for what they call red spots or hot spots, where there's material that shouldn't be there that's going to have to be removed. Well, when they do the test sites, they may show something, but it doesn't, there's not like a magic that they know how wide, how deep, how far. So they do the grid, they do the test things. What happened is, it's like, I did the analogy, it's like, you go in for, a spot of cancer on your face. You don't know how extensive it is till the doctor gets there and he starts removing. How far into the tissue does he go?
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happens here. So they take those boring sites that were what we call red sites, and they start removing the dirt, and they can't stop until they get out what has to come out.
Right.
And that far exceeded what was based into the contract. Anything beyond what was in the contract, then it falls on us, the town.
Right, and it's
not that due diligence wasn't done. It was.
No.
This is beyond.
And I will say, the building committee is keeping track of things that we would like to consider to challenge towards the end of the project. We need to get this project done as quickly as possible to save money, and we need to be able to pay the bills. And this Article 15 is critical to help us pay the bills, because we have a contract to finish these buildings and pay the bills. but I don't want people to think at home we're just walking away from this. We are looking at, did the engineers do a sufficient job? If there's an issue that comes up with the architecture builder, if we feel like they should have known that, we have a running list of things that we're going over, and we hold back money at the end of the project to see if we should litigate these issues. So unfortunately, that has to kind of happen later, but this needs to be applied now, and hopefully, on a personal note, as a voter, I hope that people will support this. Again, it's not an override question, it's in the town budget. It authorizes the town to borrow the money over time, and to put that money we took out of our existing contingency account and our existing construction. We had to pay the truckers and the inspectors their bills back then. And so now if we don't do this, we effectively would run out of money. And that would be catastrophic, because then the town's subject to other liabilities because of the other contracts. So this is, thankfully, that statute's out there that allows us to borrow it. And again, that's Article 15. That's a 2/3 vote. Anytime you're borrowing money, it's a 2/3 vote. Moving on to Article 16, the Community Preservation Budget. And by the way, I'll be stepping down as moderator for Article 15 about the fire station DPW because I'm involved with it. I'm also going to step down on Article 16 for the Community Preservation Budget because I also volunteer for a lot of these community projects where we're trying to improve some of our parks in our fields and such. So just to make sure there's no conflict of interest. Community preservation has been a very popular thing in town, and it really has helped us get a lot of great things done. I'll let you talk more about it, Mike, about all the good things.
So it really is. Community preservation came in to protect open space, historic preservation, affordable housing. And when people pay their tax bill, they'll see, not being a resident here, I don't know what percent, but in my old town,
1%. It's
okay,
like
1%.
$20, $30, $40 usually.
Yeah. So, and that money gets set aside into a special revenue account that's used for these types of projects that fall into that. And it goes a long way, because without those additional dollars, the town would never have the necessary funding to build new parks, create open space, recreational activities, preserve our past with historic home preservations, and to create affordable housing so that our young people, that our elderly people can stay and live in this community.
Right, and the majority of the money comes from that fee that we all pay, just as you said, and some money comes from the state. That state contribution has been smaller as of late, but we'll take every dollar we can get. So this is a breakdown of how the CPA, they reviewed all the submitted applications, and these are the ones that they've approved, and they have the money to fund each year. You can see them listed there: a bike path, Griffin Dairy shed, Griffin Dairy electricity improvements, Island Grove priority plan, Strawberry Valley consulting services. They have 20 acres that was just donated to them, so they're going to review how to change the layout of the court, make that even a better place to be. JV baseball field netting, ADA memorial path at Memorial Field, Memorial Field restrooms, which is one of the projects I'm working on. I'm sick of the porta potties, and this might be our solution. Softball field updates, Phase 2, Little League updates, Phase 3, the Abington Library sit and read benches, which is great, Griffin Dairy ADA improvements. And then we have historic preservation. We're spending money and we're putting money into reserves for future historic. And the same thing with housing, where they're contributing money towards the senior housing on Shaw Avenue called the Vincent Blanchard Gardens, part of the Window Project. It's an amazing thing that they're working with them. They put up $100,000 in CPA funds, which allows them to qualify for, I believe it's like $700,000 in grants to finish the project. So all of that is listed there, and all that money is set aside separately. It's not tax money, it's CPA money, but it requires a majority vote for people to approve everything listed in that project, in that article, Article 16. Article 17, donation of land to the town. This is a donation of 1.2 acres of land that is actually underwater. It's at the southern end of Island Grove. I have to step down for this one too, because I was involved in trying to organize this donation. It is land that the prior owner is donating to the town, because everyone thinks that the town of Abington owns all of Island Grove. They don't. They don't own this bottom 1.28, and I think there's another sliver somewhere that's privately owned. It became an issue because, as many people may know, the town has been working through a program to treat the weeds with some chemical that's approved by the DEP, but they had to get approval from any private owners of the pond. And kind of like, why should this be a private owner? This could be donated to the town. The town would own the majority, almost all of the pond. And it's a way to protect that area because it's town-owned instead of privately owned. It's a donation, doesn't cost the town any money. Someone had asked, well, they're just trying to avoid taxes. Well, it's valued at $2,300, so the tax bill every year is $24, $25. It's not avoiding taxes. This is just trying to be a donation to the town. That would require a majority vote to accept that gift. Article 18, the Veterans Property Tax Exemptions for Property Held in Trust. This is, again, the Veterans Office and the assessors working together to try to implement everything we can to help give opportunities for veterans and their spouses and families.
Yes. Normally, under the law, unless you allow the change, the legislature made a change and you're accepting this, property that was held in trust, if your house was in a trust and you couldn't get the exemption, we're expanding it now to allow property that's held in trust, so we just have to accept that section, and then veterans can apply for that.
Because a lot of veterans, older people, do put their houses in trust.
Correct.
And you're right. So if Michael Maresco was a veteran and owned a house in Abington under the name Michael Maresco, he could apply for the veterans tax exemption. But if it was under the Maresco Family Trust,
I would not be
you
able
would not be able to apply, which doesn't seem right, and this is where this would be corrected if town meeting votes to approve Article 18. Article 19, the transfer of the Caristia property. This is a transfer of 61 acres of land that is currently under the control of the selectmen, and it would be transferred into the control of the Conservation Commission, so it would be open space, protected open space. People have asked, where is this? The best way I can describe it, if you're going up Route 18 heading to Weymouth, and you go past Sorrell's on your left, and you go past Helm Street, and there's some landscaping on the left, and it used to be the old pool place and Bud's Goods. Everything out behind those is a big, it's a big swamp area. It goes all the way out to Blueberry Road, and it borders Vineyard Road. 61 acres of land the town already owns. They're just transferring the control of it to the conservation as protected open space.
And the reason they're doing that, so land held by the select board can be sold. Land transferred to conservation under Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution, as you know as a lawyer, that's a very high threshold to get it out. This protects that land in perpetuity. It can't be sold, and it remains open space.
And because we'd be putting that restriction on the town land, we need a 2/3 vote to approve that transfer.
Correct.
It is, to my knowledge, not buildable land at all, but it is nice open space that the town purchased many years ago with a grant, actually, and now we're just further protecting it. Article 20, the acceptance of Gordon Circle as a public way. Gordon Circle is a small dead-end street off of Lincoln Street that was built actually about 20 years ago. I think there's 4 houses on it, and this has been an issue for the planning board over the years. The road was built, the houses were built, people moved in, but the developer, I really don't know the details of it, but the developer just didn't do all the final paperwork. And he had a bond that was posted, and the planning board has been working with town council and the neighbors about how to resolve this. And it's my understanding the planning board has been advised by town council not to accept this as a public road because there are some repair issues now, since it's 20 years old, and that typically we usually accept roads when they're brand new and there are no repair issues. It would be a 2/3 vote to accept it, and I know there's also people in town who would like to see it accepted because they feel like the people who live on that street, it wasn't their fault. It's going to be an interesting debate. And it is still being plowed by the town, I understand.
That is correct.
And that's true of all private ways.
We do, unless they're posted that they don't want anyone there. And we do that for public safety. We need the cruisers to get up there, fire trucks and the ambulances, so we do that.
Right. And that's, a lot of towns do that, right?
Correct.
If all of a sudden someone calls for an ambulance and the road's not plowed, that's a crisis.
Yeah.
But this, in order for Gordon Circle to be a public way, it needs a 2/3 vote of approval, and I'm sure we'll hear explanations from the planning board and also some lobbying from some of the neighbors, and it's up to you people to decide. And again, Gordon Circle, which is off of Lincoln Street.
And I did meet with them. The select board asked me to meet with them. They had come before the select board. I met with them. I conferred with Liz, who's the town planner. There was a study, so a silver study that was done, released the findings in December. There's about $40,000 worth of work that needs to be done. Some of the manholes are sunk, things like that. The roads are 20 years old, and you were right. For some reason, that all developers have to put up a bond. They never tried to collect the bond. The select board did instruct the town manager to send a letter to the planning board saying that they should keep the money. But state law, you can't keep the money. But, if we were going to accept it, the select board was thinking that would go a long way to put the road back into good shape.
Right. So again, an issue for town meeting to discuss, debate, and then vote upon, and that is the second to last article on the warrant or the agenda. That was Article 20. Article 21, the last article of the night, it's the right to farm bylaw, to see if the town will vote to approve this bylaw. This bylaw, I believe, is copied from the state's model right to farm bylaw. There's provisions in here that basically say it is hereby determined that whatever impact may be caused by others, caused to others through the normal practice of agriculture is more than offset by the benefits of farming to the neighborhood, community, and society in general. It is, well, why don't you describe it, Michael, to the best of your ability?
Sure. So, right to farm, my former town where I was in Marshall, they did adopt this a few years ago. People wanted it. There were a lot of farms. People wanted to be able to. For the biggest thing is we had a lot of people in that particular town that moved in and wanted to keep horses. This sort of come out of, there was some discussion of the Board of Health wanted to
Inspect the
put some
stables and
inspect stables, wanted people to report the types of animals that they have and do that on an annual basis. This sort of creates a structural framework for people to have farming and agricultural by right at their home. Now, they would still be subject to annual inspections to make sure that they're being good neighbors, taking care of the animals. The animals are clean. There's not foul smells affecting your neighbor's ability to live and enjoy their property. This does come with some reporting. There are some reporting requirements, but it will be up to townspeople. I had the opportunity to sit in on a couple of those public hearings, and most residents like the idea of having animals, having chickens, horses. At one time, people had some llamas. I heard people coming in with all different things. And then the whole aspect of farming. People are really now starting to wanting to have little gardens at their house
Right.
and stuff like that. So this encompasses a whole array. You'll see in the definition in farming, it's about cultivating, growing, harvesting, agriculture, floricultural, viticultural, and horticultural. And you can all do that. Raising of livestock and horses, a commercial enterprise, poultry, swine, which are pigs. It even allows for emus, ostriches, rayas. I don't even know what they are. I'd have to look them up. And beyond, it gets into the farming and the animals. So it's really going to be what people think. I mean, I think it's an opportunity that creates that structural framework that would allow that with some limitations. It's like anything else. People have to be good stewards of whatever is enacted.
Right, and those requirements, the nuisance and cleanliness, those laws are already in effect.
That's correct.
And there is a section in disclosure notification that
Yeah.
says that if you're selling your house or if you're renting your property, every property that is to be sold or any apartment that's to be leased, the owner is required to send a notice to the tenant or the new buyer that this is a right to farm community. It has the language they have to give to them. You have to file a copy of that notice with the town hall, and if you don't, it says there's a $300 fine. I don't know if that's ever going to be enforced or how it'll be enforced. And it also says the town has to mail out a copy of the notice about the right to farm provisions to every landowner at least once a year by mail. So again, there's some pros and cons to it. That's why we go to town meeting. This requires a majority vote. And if you want to know more about right to farm, read it over. It's in the warrant. You can also, I'm sure, Google it more online and learn more about the benefits of right to farm and how it might affect you if you're a neighbor of a farmer, and how it might affect you if you are a farmer. And like you said, it might be just growing tomatoes and things, or it might be raising chickens and roosters. It encompasses a lot of things.
Emus.
Or emus, right. Anything else, Mike? I mean, again, May 4th is the big date for town meeting. May 4th, it's a Monday night. It's at the auditorium at Abington High School. Please don't show up at 7 o'clock. We need you to show up at least 20 minutes early because you need to check in with the town clerk, show that you're on the voting list, and then we'll get you seated. And once we have 150 people in the auditorium, we'll try to get started right away. This is a big year. This is the 250th anniversary of 1776, the revolution that gave birth to this country. So it's, it's an important year for all the legislators, all the town meetings to come together and make those decisions what everyone feels is best for their business, for their family, for their person, for their town as a whole. We all contribute, we all benefit, and it's very healthy when we have a lot of people there discussing things. We don't need name calling. I won't allow it. We just want to hear different opinions and help you make your decision that, that's a good opinion. I think I'll vote this way or I'll vote that way. I look forward to it. You never know what's going to happen, but we have 21 articles to discuss.
I just, I share your sentiments. I'm looking forward to town meeting. I want people to be informed. It's my role to make sure if they have questions that we get the answers to, make sure that we have plenty of warrants available. The annual report's now available. We have copies in the select board office. We also have it online if people want to read it online. And like we said at the beginning, if people have questions, they can reach out to me. They can email me. We're going to have a calculator up on the town website where it says town meeting. There's already one up on the town accountant's site so people can go in and plug in those costs. So it gives them an idea based on their monthly budget, what they can afford.
Michael, I want to thank you as a town manager for taking the time to tape so many of your town manager shows, because not only are we doing today's show, but you have also had us guests, different department heads explaining how the budget will be affected by the votes at town meeting. I know Kevin Tocci and Matt Lyons, who are here at Abington Cam, have also had interviews with the different candidates who are running for office, and all of that helps try to inform you and educate you to get just more involved with the community of Abington, because you are the government. So we really hope you'll take part. And again, a couple of big dates coming up. Saturday, April 25th is the annual town elections. So those are like elections for school committee and board of selectmen, things like that. That is Saturday, April 25th, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Beaver Brook School on Ralph Hamlin Lane, right near the Ferolio. Then, of course, town meeting on May 4th. That's a Monday, 7 o'clock. Please arrive 20, 30 minutes later. There's usually a line of people checking in. And then Saturday, May 16th, would be the override ballot election. That will also be at the Beaver Brook, and I believe that's also 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
That is correct.
So circle those dates, and please vote at the annual town election on April 25th. And please try to come to town meeting, and if you can't, please vote on May 16th for the different override selections that you may be asked to basically offer your vote. And get on the web, abingtonma.gov is the town website.
That is correct. Thank you, Shawn. I want to thank you for being here. It's been great. You've been really helpful so that I got acclimated to things that I need to know, things that I need to do.
Baptism by fire, Michael, huh?
It does feel like that. I'm enjoying it very much. And I want to just say thank you for you being here. I want to say thank you for all of our residents that tune in to the Town Manager Corner. And I look forward to people tuning in. I'm going to continue to have departments come forward and talk about the services that they provide to the residents. So I hope everyone has a great day.